Hey, Sonia, thanks so much for joining me on a well-designed business today.
It's a pleasure to be here, LuAnn. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, this is super fun because you just spent the day with us at Power Talk Friday in Las Vegas. We're recording in September 2024 and we were together, I guess August
Mhm.
2024. So this I love this. I love having this chance to check in with you on how you're doing since being at Power Talk Friday in Las Vegas, but what I'm also really interested is that as much as we did spend from 8:30 in the morning till 11:30 at night together in your intake form, I learned things about you that I didn't have the chance to learn that day. So I'd like you to start with us there, Sonia, that backstory of what happened in your business and how it sort of at this point in time kind of culminated in some ahas at Power Talk Friday. And then from there, we'll kind of talk about what do you see for the future based on that. So give the backstory that you shared in your intake form with me.
Okay, I will. Hopefully, I won't give too much information, but I, rewind, go back in time. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2006. So it's been a long time that I've been in the industry since then. And probably people think you probably should be further along in your career. It's not always the case because it's a little bit of a winding, turning route sometimes to get where you are. After I graduated with my bachelor's, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I worked in the kitchen and bath industry, doing high-end luxury homes down in the Scottsdale area. It was wonderful. I loved it. But after a couple of years being there, I got pregnant, and it all planned. Everything was wonderful, and it culminated at a similar time that my husband was applying for a job back in Idaho, where I grew up. So we ended up having our baby and moving a couple months later back up to Idaho and said goodbye to that wonderful career, wonderful company that I got to work with down there,
Mm.
and started the whole like, now I'm back in the land of snow and ice and cold, and I have a brand new little baby, and kind of lost a little bit of my identity, which I think a lot of
Mm.
new moms do. But that's okay. We, you go through that process. We had baby number two, and it was at the time of baby number two being born that we found out that baby number one had autism.
Mm.
So I was quickly dropped into the world of I've got a special needs child, and then eventually found out baby number two also was on the spectrum, which they call it the autism spectrum now.
Wow.
So, with two children on the spectrum, going back to work full time wasn't in the cards, and it was not. It was my season to be at home, be with them, go to therapies. But I worked at the university that I graduated from. I was able to go back and teach as teaching interior design, teaching kitchen and bath, things like that. That just kind of helped me keep my foot in the door, keep a little bit of that business brain going
Yeah.
because you get a little crazy when you're just stuck at home all the time. Um, but by the time my youngest was 4, I was done only being the stay at home mom. And again, there's no judgment on people who love it, ever.
1000%.
But I am the type of person that I need to be busy. I need to use my brain. I need to be active and doing something. And I was kind of sick of people just asking for free advice. So that's when I was like, I'm going to at least have a business so that I can legitimately charge people, even if I can't do this full time.
Right.
So in 2015, that's when I started the business, but I really didn't do like it was what you would probably call a hobby business. It was when I had time, I'd take one client at a time. Everything was word of mouth. I bootstrapped a website together, but I still didn't even know that you could I didn't know how to get on Google. I didn't know that you had to do all of that. I knew nothing. I didn't have Instagram. I had nothing. I was just doing here and there, and it was great. And it just slowly grew momentum over the years to the point of 2019. And it was 2018 that I was again getting bored. I
Mm.
have that problem of just being like, well, this just isn't that challenging because it was just a little hobby interior design business. Again, I have my degree in it. I have experience in it, and I was already just kind of bored. And I learned about co-working spaces, which I know are a big thing now, but back in 5-6 years ago, they weren't really well known. And I was like, oh, wouldn't that be so cool if there was a co-working space here, especially one with a daycare in it? Because then you could work. Here I am, a mom in this position, being like, I want to go to work, but I have littles, but it'd be nice if they were taken care of in another part of the building and I could focus.
Right.
And I was like, wouldn't that be so great for other working parents in my area? So I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going to build a co-working space that I can run my design business out of. And just, it would, in the back of my mind, I'm like, it'd be so easy. I can run a co-working space. Yeah, not a big deal.
And a design business.
And a design business. The naivety is just shining right through.
But you know what? You probably could have done it. Anyway, keep going.
So I did a deep dive. That summer of 2019, I started listening to podcasts about co-working spaces, similar ones to how you've done this about interior design. There's ones that are about how to build a co-working space. So I start listening to them. I take a trip down to Salt Lake. I'm going into all the co-working spaces there. Some I'm pretending to be a potential person, and the other ones I'm like, I want to build one in Idaho. Will you tell me about it? So I'm kind of getting both sides, and I'm putting all the data together. I'm finding spaces here in town, putting numbers together, running everything, got my spreadsheets. And in the end, I'm like, the market won't support it.
Yeah.
It just won't. We had cheap real estate. People have rooms in their houses. They're not going to spend that much per month to get a tiny little spot in an office. And I was like, oh, I'm so sad. It was so depressing.
It's like sometimes there's a reason why things that are popular in other areas aren't at the place that we are, right? It's like
correct. There's a reason I went to Salt Lake, to a market city where there's a lot more tech companies. And that's it. It's like I'm looking for businesses or places that could hold a big room.
Yeah.
Well, that's not where you're going to make money. You're going to make money by putting more butts and seats in smaller areas, but it's fine. I learned I had to sadly put it on the back burner. And as everybody can probably allude to, this is the end of 2019 that I'm realizing I'm putting it on the back burner, only to find out it's the best thing that I could have done.
God, I don't have a lease on a big building in 2020.
So
thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe. There's always an answer. There's always a reason that things don't work out. So that didn't work out at that time. And I was back to being a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling my kids during 2020. And the momentum of my interior design business was at the point I was full-time. And I was like, this is nuts. What was I thinking of doing another business? This one is taking all of my time. So in the end, I was like, I've spent all this time feeling like I've wasted time studying up on this whole other co-working space idea. And I was like, I need to take this energy and this time and put it into this business right now that it's actually kind of successful. It's kind of working. It's existing. Why am I trying to recreate the wheel here? And so that's what I did. And that's when I was able to find your podcast. I was able to hire somebody in 2020. I had to grow it because it was too much to do on my own. But I also was woefully lacking in my business skills. And I knew there was so much I needed to learn. So that was, deep dive into LuAnn land and any research I could find, anything, any advice. I talked to other entrepreneurs. I was like, what do you do? I talked with my bookkeeper. We realized there was things that we needed to change there. There was just so much. And since 2020 to now, it's been a full circle journey from I'm embarrassed what my first employees had to deal with me because I was literally just like cobbling it together. Yeah, like, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing, but thank you for being on this journey with me.
We all know that. We've all been there, believe me. Oh, you're here now. Great. Please fix everything.
Yeah.
Figure it out on your own somehow.
Exactly. One of my admins who is still here with me, bless her heart, when I hired her, she's like, what are you looking for? I was like, I need someone to be my brain. And she's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, don't know. but I need you to be my brain because it's in a lot of different places. I need an additional one. So
Right, right, right. So, okay, so I love this. I love, first of all, that that your inclination was to do all this research, not just like lease a place and off to the races you go, right? And then the second aha of, whoa, I just like literally research created, did the market research, the business research, created a business plan, and for a business that I haven't done that for my own business, right? Right?
correct.
Like it's crazy. Like, so, Power Talk Friday, I usually say it. I'm sure I said it. I've said it on the show before and I've said it at live presentations that I've done. It's like, would you, any of you as an interior designer, just go start ordering furniture for any space that you are tasked with designing? Would you be like, hey, it looks like we're going to need 2 or 3 sofas and some love seats and some lamps and rugs. Let me just start clicking and buying. And everybody's like, well, of course not. I'm like, right. What do? You create a floor plan. You go and you measure it and you figure it out and you decide what do you need in the space and what would be best for the space. I said, but how many of you made a business plan before you opened up your design firm, right? Or do you just like, here we are, shingle, I'm here, let's
Hmm.
go? So it's crazy, right?
Well, and I think it's because in society, it's perceived that interior design can start as a hobby business.
Right.
So oftentimes it does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not discounting all the people who do start off that way. It's just a matter of realizing that the hobby business is a hobby business because we're just fitting it into little bits of time. We're not super serious about it. And you
Right.
have to become super serious if you're going to do it full time.
Well, and that's funny because when you describe it that way, Sonia, it also brings to mind the other thing that I often talk about is I've had I've had designers who are reluctant to invest in their own personal and business development at the beginning. There's a big question I get is, am I ready for Power Talk Friday? I've only been in business 1 year, or blah, blah, blah. Or should I wait 2 years till I take a Lu University course? Or should I wait 3 years until I hire a business coach or whatever it should be? I have people say to me, well, I've only been in business this long, or, I don't know if I should do the standard, like Sandra Funk standard. Like, I don't
Hmm.
care what it is. It doesn't have to be my stuff, anybody's stuff, right? And so one thing is the questioning of, should I be investing in myself personally to learn the business side before a certain period? And I'm always like, so how much pain is worthwhile until you feel like that investment is worthwhile? Do you need 1 year of pain? Do you need 5? Do you need 10? There's people that need 20 years of pain, right? Like, and then the second side of that is that I will have designers that say to me, I'm happy to tell you I've been in business 5 years and I've never been in debt. And I'm interested in doing, Darla's Instagram course, but it's $2,000 and I have to wait till I make that money. Or I want to take a Lu University class, but I'm going to save up for it until I have it. And the thing about it is I'm not in favor of spending money needlessly. But to your point, because you can be a hobby business as a designer, I use the example of a pizza parlor. It
Hmm.
doesn't take a whole lot of skill to own a pizza parlor, right? You don't even have to be the one that knows how to make the pizza or the pasta, right? Like, you need
Right.
to find a good pizza maker and a good chef to make the dishes, right? But does anybody think that they're opening a pizza parlor without a significant, probably six-figure investment in ovens, in the chef, and maybe your mom's the chef? Okay, right? But like furniture, tables, how about just like, salt and pepper shaker holders,
Hmm.
plates, like refrigerators, all of the things. How about all the paper goods needed, right? Like, there is a multiple dollar investment. But when a business owner opens up a pizza parlor, they get it. They go to the bank, they get a loan, and they know they have to work their butt off and they have to make it a real business to do it. But to your point, because you can just go in business as an interior designer, we often overlook the steps that create a real business. And they include things like investing in yourself and in your business, right, Sonia?
Correct. I mean, we aren't a brick, oftentimes it's not a brick and mortar to start out
Right.
with. So people think I can do it for free. You're going to eventually pay. but you're
Yeah.
either going to pay in time or you're going to pay in money. So
Exactly.
figure out what you want to do. And I've paid multiple times in embarrassment and time, but now it's really nice just to be like, okay, I learned from that, but now I'm going to seek out additional advice and possibly pay for it because, yeah, it's painful to do it the
Yeah.
other way.
It is. And you know what? Most people, have half a brain in their head, right? They're going to figure it out, right?
Yep.
Some people have a little less talent in some area and a little more talent in another area. But we're pretty much, if you're inclined to start a business, I would say probably 90% of the people that are inclined to start a business have some clue of how to do it, right? Like we're not talking about
Hopefully.
people that have any skill set, right? But why invent the wheel, right? Why invent the wheel?
Hmm.
Okay. So you now start to take this seriously, the design business seriously. And you're like, okay, let's put some brakes on. Let's take this seriously. Let's apply the things that I did to investigating the viability of this WeWork quote unquote co-working space. Let's put that to my business. And what happens now? Take us to the next step. You start to meet with some different business coaches. And what happens now?
Correct. Like I did a myriad of things. I did get a business coach. The first one, and again, I don't know what happens in other states. It's still an option for you to look into. There's a small business coalition, I think, in the state of Idaho where they offer free business coaching for people if
Yes,
they are
like
starting out.
SCORE and other states is called
Yes.
right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
So I did work with one there because again, I was a little tentative of like, well, I don't know where to start. Let's start free. Let's start with that business
And why
coach.
not?
Right.
They typically will offer great advice. They're usually entrepreneurs that are retired, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And she was fantastic. She had great experience, worked in California, built several businesses. She came from a very business mind and really pushed me in a lot of directions. But in that process, she gave me a DISC assessment, which I'm sure you're familiar with DISC. And I had never taken it before. I've taken other ones. And the result that I got from it, she just paused and she's like, huh, I have never had an entrepreneur get that result. And I kind of was like, well, what does that
Good
mean?
or
And she's
bad,
like,
right? Yeah.
yeah, like how do I take that? And she's like, well, I don't know. I don't take it bad. I think you can still work with it. But typically entrepreneurs are in the red and yellow. What's that one? The determined and the energy, the influence, the dominance and influence. They're
Okay.
typically in those like high energy ones. And she's like, you're steady. Like you are the highest steady I've seen. She's like, you'd be a great worker bee. And I'm like, but I have a business. Like, what do I take this information? And again, she wasn't demeaning in any way. She's just like, I've never seen it before.
She's just
But
out of her element.
uh-huh.
She had her expertise in owning and operating businesses and the lessons that she got from it, but she's not like my cousin Eileen is a leadership consultant, right?
Hmm.
And so if she got a DISC assessment like that, her thing would be, where are the strengths? Let's figure out how you're going to use this to run your business. That just was out of her realm, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
she's just like, I
Shocked. Yeah.
shocked a
Yeah.
little bit of like, well, you obviously are still doing it. It's just that you might need to work on some of those other personality traits. And I was like, oh, great. I, I already felt like I got an F on the test is pretty much what I got. And I was like, okay, I failed the personality to be in the business.
Oh my God. Oh my
And so,
But wait, time out. And so here's
yeah,
the thing. Uh, I'm laughing. We're laughing.
yeah, we're laughing.
But that's not funny though, is it?
No,
It's
I
just still
cried when
funny,
I
right?
got,
Yeah.
yeah, when I got
Yeah,
off,
yeah,
I
yeah.
cried.
Because this
Yeah.
is like hindsight, right? This is like
Hmm.
in the moment, it's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never want to hear that you're not cut out to run a business or you're
Mhm.
not cut out to do what you're doing. And so there's always that in the back of your mind. I didn't say this earlier, but like when I went and started interior design and went to and got it as my my bachelor's degree, I was probably the least artistic of the group. I am not an artist by nature. I can be creative, but they had to teach me how to be creative. They're like, keep pushing, keep going, Sonia. I'm one of those, I'm like, so here's the solution. Let's go. Let's be done. Like, I don't need to keep reinventing and looking for 5 different solutions. Let's find the first one and
Let's make a good one the first time and keep it rolling.
keep it rolling. Like, let's just move on. I don't want to waste my time. And so, um, coming back to this, I was like, okay, well, I'm not creative. I'm also not meant to be a business owner. Maybe I
Yeah,
should stop.
that's
And
hard.
it's hard, but I'm also one of those that's super stubborn. I'm like, oh, I'm still going to do it. And I just said, like, maybe we're not the best fit. And I did. We ended amicably, and things went well. And she did help me on lots of things, but I didn't continue working with her because I was like, I just don't know if she fully understands what interior designers do. And that's the advice. I was like, I need to work with business coaches that might know more of what the industry entails because it's a unique industry.
Yeah.
And I did learn that from listening to the podcast more and more of how people are like, the finances are weird. The
Yeah.
expertise is weird. Like it's a lot more in depth of a career choice than what people give it credit for.
Absolutely. It's a crazy wackadoodle unicorn business.
Hmm.
1000%.
So at that point, I'm signing up for some of LuAnn University courses. I've done another coach on your group, Anna. I can't remember her last
Oh, Anna
name.
Nelson.
Yes, and so she
Oh.
did an assessment with me, and she was really sweet. Again, some of those results also made me feel super self-conscious because I was like,
Oh.
oh, contradictory results, things that just make me think that I'm just spinning my wheels. I'm constantly going to be trying to perfect something. Like that's my nature, to perfect it, but to also criticize it and find fault with it. Like, and I just felt like, oh wow, I am just never going to get anywhere because I'm just going to cycle through self-doubt and feeling like I'm not there.
Mm.
So again, we could talk about that all day, but we're not going to. Take all the courses, apply what I can, do all of that. Back in 2019, I had first heard about Power Talk Friday.
Mm.
It was one of your episodes. He'd even said, people keep asking, what is Power Talk Friday? And I'm like, yeah, what is Power Talk Friday? I don't understand what's happening here. And when you finally explained it, it's an event on a Friday, typically with a market. I'm like, I want to go. I want to be there. And I think I even messaged you being like, when's your next Power Talk Friday? And you're like, and I was like, I want to do it in Vegas because I'm closest to Vegas. And you're like, we're going to be doing it next year.
Oh,
But then,
there's COVID again.
and then COVID came in, and I was like, oh, well, there goes Power Talk Friday. And I'm a chicken and I don't want to travel very far alone. So I never went to any of the
High
bigger
profile
events,
ones, yeah.
but eventually I will. But I was just like, I'll just wait till it comes to Vegas. And luckily this year you came to Vegas. And
Yeah.
that I was just like, finally I can go and I can just enjoy and be in a comfortable area that I know. I think that's the biggest thing is I just get nervous at places I've never been, but
Mm.
I've been to Vegas. I can travel there and enter into your realm of genius with all your coaches. And it was an illuminating event.
Mm.
Partially because of all the great takeaways that I got from it. And it, for those that may be wondering, I'm not blowing smoke. This is true. You walk away feeling like, oh, I got a lot of homework to do. Like they legit get in within 5 minutes, give you like diagnose your problem with only like 2 sentences you say. I don't know how you guys do it,
It's
but
crazy, right?
it's so crazy. But I met with each of the coaches separately, which was really cool in that, I don't know, however you had it set up.
The round tables that
The round table. And
we break out in the afternoon, yes.
thank you. And so going to each of you and talking and asking the questions, I had come to you first and I shared some of the stuff and I just kind of blurted out, I'm an integrator. I know I am. I'm not a visionary. And I don't even know how we got talking on it, but and you're like, oh, well, that's great. And I was like, is it? Look at this room. They're all full of creative visionaries. I am not. I feel like a fish out of water here. Am I doing okay? And I'm like showing you my stuff and I've got my pile of like spreadsheets and I'm like, what do you want to see? And you were like, I don't want to see any of it. And I didn't blame you because I'm just a giant nerd over here. But it was, you immediately were like, no, that's good. That's cool. And I'm like, it is? I haven't heard that yet. And then we went around and I got to Shauna Lynn Simon. Did I say her name right?
Yep.
Okay. And I was telling her, and she did want to see some of my stuff. So she's looking at my spreadsheets and she's looking at my different forms, and she's like, "This is really cool.
So she's
This
a
is
nerd like
great."
that too.
Yeah, and so we bonded over our
Yeah.
nerddom, and I was like, both of you had said, "This is great.
This is a positive.
It's a positive what you're doing. This isn't bad what you're doing." And it's not that I ever thought that doing the spreadsheets was a bad thing. I just thought, can I be a success? Can I run a successful design business, not being the artist visionary that everybody else is? I have to tap into it. I'm
Mhm.
still creative when I need to be, but I love my spreadsheets. I love the nerding stuff. I love doing more building the business rather than saying, I want to go build the most beautiful house in town. I don't care about that. I just want to build this cool business.
Right, right. Well, it's so interesting because it's here interesting to hear your side of how it evolved, right? Because for me, you sat to my left, so you were closest to me, right? It was you were on my left, and Shauna Lynn was on my right, and then the other women around the table. And you know how that happens, right? It's like we're all talking the whole morning. We're all talking as a group, and we're
Hmm.
taking apart different topics that impact everybody's business. And then we have the opportunity, because it is a small group, to kind of go further if somebody's like, well, for my business it's this way, and for my business it's that way. So and then, but when you're the person sitting next to somebody, there's also that in between little, like, you say one thing, you look at each other's eyes when something resonates, right? And so, from my perspective, the entire morning, the combination of what I was taking in based on your particular contributions to the group discussion, and the one or two little side things that maybe when we've stopped for a break and now we're getting back to our table and you would say an observation to me or I would ask you a question or whatever it would be. By the time we got to the one-on-one roundtable, you and I was already like, you have the potential to make an amazing business here. And I was not seeing, I didn't even know that you didn't felt creative at that point. I had no idea. I didn't care. It didn't matter because I was just, I don't know if you remember me telling you that you had one of two paths that you could do. You could build your own firm up and have designers under you, or you actually could go into business as a consultant for other designers with structuring their back end. I'm like,
Hmm.
you tell me which one you want to build because I'd be happy to work with you on either, right? Like if you're like, no, I really want to have my interior design business, then you are in a prime seat for doing that, because that is the hard part. Like I get that designing is the hard part. I am never ever going to minimize that. Um, it's complicated. The details are crazy. You pick everything in a room and one item is discontinued and now the entire room is in chaos. So I never say that's easy, but that part is doable because the passion feeds that part. The
Hmm.
designer typically, they don't want to make reselections, they don't want to take the room apart, but if you have to do it, it's the thing that's fun to do ultimately. Maybe not under deadline or under, like a revision situation, but it's this part that you possess. And all morning, I was just like, this kid has got the back end done. Like this kid has got, like, you had, and so it's so funny for me. The surprise was the intake form and that part wasn't revealed during Power Talk Friday, that you had this stomach punch earlier, that
Hmm.
somebody looked at you and said, I don't know how you're going to be successful as a business person, because I literally, like all the women, we had what, 6 of you there that day, all of you had something special and unique about each of you that I thought, oh, there it is right there. That is
Hmm.
the actual joy of being in the small group, because I love being in a big group, 100 people, 200 people, 25 people, 30 people, whatever it is, and just the quick things. But the small group, you really are like, you have 2 or 3 conversation, you're like, oh, this is this person's spot, this is where they are. And it's so unusual to come across this person that has that other side. And I really do believe that you have the potential to create whatever size business you want from it. I really do.
Well, I mean, those are it's music to my ears because for so long you hear the self doubt in your own,
Yeah.
what's happening between your own ears is awful sometimes.
Yeah.
And and I'm not saying any of the coaches or any of the results in the
No,
past, they actually told me you will never do this, but that's how my mind interpreted it.
that's right. Nobody said you can't do it, but it is the story that we hear based on the
Hmm.
thing that was said. We do. We put our own bias and our own thing on it and we walk away. And if you had said to either of them, you told me I couldn't be a design entrepreneur, they'd be like, "No, I didn't." Like,
Correct.
I just was pointing out where you're going to work against your own nature and where it's no different than, like, what do I have? I have over 1,000 episodes of telling visionaries, hey guys, you have this whole other part. You got to, like, get it up to snuff. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you can't be successful. I'm saying you can't ignore this and expect to be successful. So that's all they were saying to you is, okay,
Hmm.
these are your lanes. But the thing is, those are the lanes that make the business run. That's the thing where I was like, oh my God, you are going to be just fine. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and again, it's just, I am learning that more and more of like, because I enjoy the business side and I enjoy building that, um, you can have, and I'm not saying that my stuff is mediocre, but you can pretty much, you don't have to be the most avant-garde designer and still be successful.
100%.
You don't have to be. I live in Idaho. I'm not saying everything here is luxury. In fact, it's not. It's a
Right.
lot of mid-range to high-end clients that are wonderful to work with. We have budgets. We don't get to just have $1 million everything. So working within that, doing remodels, doing smaller projects, I'm still able to make money because we're structuring it in a way and making it work with that. Where I know if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, back when I started the business, there's no way I would be successful. There's just
Mhm.
no way. I had no structure for it, no way to track it, no knowledge behind it, or be able to give the services that I need to give now.
Yeah.
And I think in the end, what I've learned from it is that the clients would prefer feeling super taken care of
Yep.
and that the process is fully understood rather than saying this is going to be the best design that I've ever seen. I'm sorry. Design has already been designed out there. It's going to be really hard to make something new. We are
Yeah.
reimagining what's already been out there and
Mhm.
being influenced by everything. So I'm like, I'm okay if I'm not the most creative in town, but
Exactly.
I am determined to be excellent in the sphere that I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And that is totally achievable. And I think just like just because 80% of the designers have to address the business side of it and up their skill set in that area, that's a fact. That is a
Hmm.
fact in order to be successful. So for you, you might have to address the creative side on a
Hmm.
consistent basis and just constantly expose yourself to Las Vegas market and High Point market and the different things and just get out of your box as far as, okay, the way I've designed the last 5 places, a version of each one is similar. You've got to push your creative muscle where just most of us have to push our business muscle. That's
Hmm.
all. You know what I'm saying? There's no right or wrong, but just objectively, like, there's no way that it's bad that you have the organized, structured integrator brain. It is not going to be the thing that keeps you from being a successful interior designer. It's like I say in the intro, you know, 80%, like, it's you got to show up and do that part of it. It's like your talent alone is not the indicator of the success of your business. That is not it. I have seen the single most creative and talented, top of the food chain interior designers that are not profitable and are scrambling year to year to pay themselves. But meanwhile, accolades and print and digital and panel discussions and all the things. And you're just like, yeah, but you pay yourself 50K a year. Like, this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? For all the things you should be doing, you should be making, $250,000. Like, let's be serious. Right.
Right. Right.
So yeah, yeah. And the thing is, for me, is I always hope that everybody understands, just like you said in the beginning about wanting to be back in the work world with your children. There's no judgment on if you want your business to be a one person solo or you want your business to be the AD designer. There's no judgment on, I care if you scale a business or you keep it small, or if you're the, business director of your business or the creative director of your business. I only care that if you are waking up in the morning and saying you have a business, that you actually are paying yourself and running it profitably and intentionally and having a business. If you wake up in the morning and say, I do design for fun, and if somebody pays me, great, and somebody doesn't, great. Go about your life. Go
Hmm.
about your life. I just want for everyone who wants to make a living at it, that they make the living that's commensurate with their level of expertise. And that doesn't happen often in the design industry, that the money earned doesn't always match the talent they have. And it's because of the gap on the business side. And that's sad. So you will maximize the creativity and the talent that you have because you have the business side down. And that's what I saw that day in 2 or 3 hours before we got into the roundtable. And that's why by the time we got to the roundtable, I was like, okay, do you want to build this out? Or do you want to build a different business?
Well, and you've put a little seed in my brain that I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, because I truly am. I'm like, do I need to like make my forms and my spreadsheets and everything something that's followable for other people to use? Is it something that could grow with it? And I love that. Like, I don't have to do it now. I can still have that in the back of my brain for in the future when I'm ready to maybe
Yeah.
switch gears. Let's say I get bored with this, because we've already heard I sometimes do that. I might say, okay, let's challenge myself with taking on consulting or something. It might be really fun.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, what I would tell you is my advice to you on that is every single thing that you can do that doesn't require every single thing that you can do with a mind to that in mind, I would do. So as you grow your business and as you develop your systems and processes for your own business, if you can say, if I'm doing this just for me, I'm doing it this way. But if I'm doing this for multiple other designers, if I'm doing this for that in the future possibility of having a business as an integrator for designers, would I tweak this? Now, I don't want everything that you do to take 50% or 100% longer because you're building it for the future. But anytime you can just be like, bang, template, bang, lesson, and capture it. It's almost
Hmm.
to me what it like the analogy that I would say is it's almost like if somebody were a blog writer, right? And they love blog writing. And I don't even care what the topic is. It could be about horses, it could be about design, it could be about anything. But if I were working with somebody who has a talent for writing, that likes to write, and they are a prolific blog writer, I'd be like, so how are you organizing those completed blogs for the contents of a book, probably? Right? Like, just
Mm.
like this would be a book on, like, so let's take horses because I just interviewed Lindsay. Wait till you guys hear this interview. Her specialty is equestrian interior design. Think
Wow.
about that one, right? Like, right? So, say Lindsay was an interior designer and she was a blog writer, right? I'd be like, okay, so these blogs all go into the care and feeding of horses. These blogs all go into, purchasing and, what all that whole world of, figuring out if a horse is a good value or not. And these, so do they end up becoming chapters in a book? Do they end up becoming different standalone books? And maybe you just, in all of your spreadsheet nerddom, you just file what you do places so that if it's 2 weeks, 2 years, 2 months, Sonia, where you're like, yeah, different stage of life. Let me go into creating a business around it. You've just been putting it all there. It's not like, okay, let me go break my whole business down and start over again. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not
Oh,
saying build them both to complete competency at the same time, but think ahead. Like me when I built the podcast, literally from like day one with no listeners, no shows recorded. I don't care. Like, I hired a podcast consultant before I did, like, I don't even know how to get this thing out to the world. Like, I'm doing this, but I have no idea how to get it from my computer to the world. Okay.
hmm.
So I hired this consultant. And then beyond that, then it was like working with Nicole Heimer and building the website. And the different things is anytime there was a question, and they said to me, well, how do you want to do this? And I'd be like, well, what's my choices? And then they would give me a choice and I'd be like, well, what's the difference? And anytime the clarity on the difference was, well, I mean, if you're doing this and you have, 200 people listening to the show or 10 people going to the website or, just you on the team, we could do it this way. But if you were, say, 5 years from now and it happens to be successful and blah, 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 I'm like, we're building it for 5 years from now. We're building it for 5. We're building it for 10,000 listeners. We're not building it for 2. We're building the website for complete clarity on all the things I do, not just, so I just always had that. It's almost an act as if. Like,
Mm-hmm.
act as if this is what my imagined dream of it will be. And we go on that line. And as long as it wasn't, and I would say, if it's 10,000 to build the thing for 10,000 people and 500 to build it for the 3 people, okay. Can we build it for the 3? And is that 500 wasted money? Will it be throw it, or is it something you will build on when I want to grow? So if it was that kind of thing and money was tight or investments were, blah, 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 I might, but I never was like, okay, build the thing because it's cheaper, easier, less expensive, or I'm never setting up my process or my intent with the content or the messaging because right now nobody's listening. It's like, no, no, no,
Right.
no. We're doing this as if it's what I imagine it to be. And so I think there's a way for you to do that as you do your business, right? Like, you make sense.
For sure. I think always having that growth mindset is huge, I think, in anything. But um, if it's in the back of your mind, it's a genius way of utilizing and being efficient with your time
Mm-hmm.
now. Because, I mean, yeah, I can read my spreadsheets for me, but maybe I
Right.
should slightly reframe
Perfect
them so that
example.
somebody else can also read them easily.
Perfect example, right? Perfect example of it. It's like, okay, if I could use it either way, let's make it a way that a creative could do it.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And if you were building a business to, like, listen, there you can hire integrators. You can hire
Hmm.
fractional integrators. You can hire full-time integrators. We've had podcast episodes. Um, was it Reagan Baker? Oh, I hate when the names don't come. So was it Reagan Baker that I don't think it was. We're going to have to find out who it was. There was somebody that ended up hiring her client because her client
Oh.
was
You were
you.
telling me about this. Yeah.
Yes, was this integrator personality, and the client had such a positive experience and could and appreciated the designer's talent and vision and all the things, and she was just like, I could blow your business up. Like, I could, if you just get me in there under the hood.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that woman now, I'm going to have to get all the names for you. Sorry, guys, not remembering it in real time. But that woman now I've learned since met you, has her own business as this back end for designers. So it's
Oh,
a
that's so
thing.
great.
I'm not making it up. It's a thing. And so it's at your disposal to do whatever. And then the other thing I will tell you is, and the reason why I know you could also build your design business and still stay in it
Hmm.
is, we have Kate O'Hara. Kate O'Hara is a very good personal friend of mine, but I met her through the podcast, and she is the CEO of O'Hara Interiors with offices in Minneapolis and Texas. And her mother started the company 40 years ago. It was Martha O'Hara Interiors. Kate came into the company and has done all the jobs. She has done purchaser. She has done this. She has done all the things except designer. Kate is a businesswoman. Kate has gone through business school and MBA programs for business and marketing and communications and all the down degrees that she has. She is now the CEO of O'Hara Interiors, has been for a couple of years now. And as her mother is just finishing her succession and transition out of the business, Kate runs a team of 25 people. And she does have design chops. I mean, she's been in
Hmm.
the business since she was a kid, off and on throughout the years, has taste, has all the things, but she's not the senior designer on any project that this multiple $1 million firm does a year. But she's got a solid business. She is the person I call my Kate. Okay. I need a CEO check. I need a CEO check. Check me on this, right? And so it is 1000% possible for you, Sonia, to take either of these paths to build your design firm, and you could have two senior designers under you with an assistant designer under them and a procurement person. You could have one senior designer, one procurement person, one office manager, and you as the rainmaker and the deal closer and the face of the company, and making sure there you're it's for you to create, is my point. It is for you to create.
And that is what is almost daunting, because it's like I could go a few different directions and I want to do almost all of it. Like, I'm not going
Yeah,
to lie and be like, oh, yeah, I want to do that. And I don't necessarily want to get out of design because I do love designing, but do I love designing so much that I don't want to do the business side? Or
right,
do I just want to do mostly the business and take on the projects I want to take
right.
on and let other senior designers take on the rest? Like,
Yeah,
there's so many options.
yeah.
We're just going to, as you say, prepare to be lucky for the
Yes,
right people to come
yes.
into my life and be the right teammates that help me build it to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, even if you weren't sure where to go now, which I know you are clear that you're going to build the firm, I would do that first. Build the firm
Yeah.
first, whether that's you and two people, you and five people, you and eight people. Build that first, because what that really means is you're building out the process, you're building out the
Hmm.
system, and you are successful and you are profitable. So it's paying you dollar bills, it's making income from your family, for your family, and there's no misstep in that. And then the other thing that I would say is that it really could end up being based on the seasons of your life as a mom with the two special needs young boys, and your the integration with your husband and caring for these boys. So, it could be like the challenge of running a profitable business during a period of their lives is the one that is manageable. And then maybe in this 5 years, 10 years from now, something changes in the what your responsibility is to these young men, right? And maybe it's like, okay, now I can expand and I can take on more. Or, now maybe I'm more mobile and I don't need to be here for design projects. And we, as you got young men and you're going to travel the world. I don't know, but
Right.
we don't have to know it, is really what I'm saying. We don't have to know it. That's the cool part, right?
Oh, it takes the stress off of it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the other ahas from Shauna Lynn was, you don't need to know your vision 10 years down the road.
Right.
Just know it the next 3 years. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I
Right.
don't I don't know where I want to go, but I know what the next couple
Right.
of steps are.
Right. Yeah. And that's an interesting point, because I will often, whether it's Power Talk Friday or my one on one coaching, I will often ask, where do you want to be 1, 5, and 10? Like, it's not that but I don't actually, I only want to know the 5 and 10 if you know it. Right?
Right.
Not because you need to know it. We need to know one. We need to know 1 year for sure. We kind of like you to know 3. It'd be great, because it takes a minute to build a plan for something that you want in 3. But 5 and 10 for a lot of us it's more elusive, and it's actually going to change over the 5 or 10 years for probably 80% of us, right? 20%, like I think about Bregan Jane. Bregan Jane is somebody that I imagine she probably still has made some turns and pivots, but particularly my last interview with her, it was like, oh, you've actually planned a lot of this out. The other episode that is very much like that is Vanessa De Leon. Way back in the first, I remember she was in the first 16 episodes. I don't remember what number she was, but I remember she was in the Sweet 16. And she was like, 1 year from now, 3 years now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And it's been 8 years. And I've literally watched her create everything. You go back and
Wow.
you listen to that podcast, and everything she said she wanted to do, she is doing it. And that's rare, though, to have that clarity and not to change a mind along the way. So yeah, it's when we coach with you guys, if you know it like that deeply in your bone, then I want to know it, because
Hmm.
the things that we do in the next year and the next 3 years are going to impact that. But if you don't know it, I don't care. I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years from now. Like, let's be serious. I have an idea, but I'm going to change it 16 times along the way. Right.
Well, and I mean, for the audience, that permission to not know actually gives you more confidence.
Yeah.
You don't have to know. Like there were so many things that you gave me permission on. You probably don't even know, but the comments you'd make, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, because I thought I have to have this, I have to have that, I have to have that, and you were like, no, you don't. Your situation's different than that person's situation, and I was like, okay, thank you, because you get this comparison mindset that, well, if that person has a goal and has reached it in 10 years, crap, I have to have one too, or I'm not successful.
Yes, yes, yes. I see that. I hear that.
But it's nice to have a trajectory and then be flexible enough to take on whatever opportunities come
Yeah.
your way, because you never know. The world could have another pandemic, which could change things. You can't predict those. Your life could have something that happens to it, but it doesn't mean that those, you know, turns in the road don't lead you in a better direction.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think we just all need to be ready for whatever comes our way and just do our best to at least be moving up the hill. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
care
yeah,
if it's
yeah.
left, right, or center.
Right, right. Well, and I think, what you're capturing there too, Sonia, is that that magic of the small groups, because when you're out there and you're listening to the podcast and you hear me maybe go on for 5 minutes admiring Vanessa DeLeon and Breegan Jane, I can see how in your own box, sitting in your own world, you're just like, oh, I'm not like that. So I guess I'm not going to be, and I've never heard it that way. Right. I've never heard that as, oh, that could be what's happening. Right. But that is the power of being in a small room, because when I look at your eyeballs, like, it doesn't even occur to me that you have to do what somebody else has done. It's not even part of my DNA to compare you to somebody else. I'm taking you at face value. I'm ascertaining your gifts. I'm hearing all the things like I did with you. It was like each one of you, like I said, there's different things that you pick up and you're like, oh, this is where this person has to lean in. And so, it's interesting to hear you say that it, it, it's a good lesson for me to remember as I talk on the show, to really recognize that you have to find the place, whether it's, a bestie, a mentor, paid coaching, whatever, where somebody does evaluate and help you evaluate yourself just for you, not based on 1,000 other people on the podcast.
Thank you. I mean,
Right.
again, if I could give credit where credit's due, which is on you, Power Talk Friday does that. It does the quick diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
that I've always wanted. I wanted someone to come in, and I would love even a further diagnosis, but again, that's a lot of time for someone to dive in and tell me where I'm screwing up on everything. But it's amazing how quickly every single one of you and the other coaches were able to diagnose and pinpoint one thing that I could work on.
I
And I was
love
like,
it.
oh, duh.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Why didn't I think about that? But then at the same time, if I posed one question to you, which was, do I need to move out of my house? Like the business out of my house, it's still in my basement. I have it here because my kids need me. Is that a bad thing? And you were like, no, it's fine. And I was like, but everybody's been telling me I need a brick and mortar. And you're like, who cares what everybody else is thinking? Why would you waste overhead on that when it's working? And I'm like, oh, okay.
I remember
Thank you.
that. I'm like, wait, no, if you don't want it, you don't have to do it.
It's just the weird
Yeah.
things you hear and you
Yes.
think that's the hallmark of a successful
Yeah.
business, is having your own office space or having 10 employees or, getting published or something like that. That doesn't make a successful business.
No.
We know what it is. It's being able to pay yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being able
That's exactly it. And it's so funny because, I don't know who I recently, in the last couple of weeks, I had this conversation also with somebody for a different reason. But I can remember the pushback was, well, but I do think that I will be taken more seriously as a business owner, as an interior design entrepreneur, if I have a brick and mortar. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not, no. And they're just, well, I mean, and I'm like, look, I'm not saying somebody's going to take you less seriously, but
Hmm.
if you're waiting for a piece of real estate to declare that you're serious and that you're worthy of charging your fees, you've got bigger problems. Like, it's between your ears. The real
Hmm.
estate is not going to change that. And so I get, to me, it's like, I get that there's a moment. I get that maybe just the physical walking into the building every day gives you a surge of confidence and energy. I'm not negating that. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that that you personally wouldn't get a value from it. Like you just like, okay, game face. It's like some people do power pose before they go on
Mhm.
stage. Like I don't personally need that, right? But like there are things. And so if this is a mechanism for that for you to remind you that you are legit and that you are thing, as long as you are doing it profitably, hey, stare in the mirror, put your hands over your head, or buy a brick and mortar. I don't care. But you're not going to tell me that that is a factor in your being taken seriously. That I will debate with you all day long. That I know is not a truth. It is not a truth. And it's funny is because, you know, I can think of more than a few, more than a dozen designers that I've known over the last 42 years that have been extremely well sought after, well published, making money, all the things that have always worked out of their home. So
Mhm.
it's not even like it's me doing the, Rudy pep talk. You don't need a brick and mortar to be a serious business. It's
Mhm.
actually a fact. It's like actually a fact.
'Cause didn't you say Sandra Funk had her business for years out of her
Yes.
house with multiple employees,
Yes.
and it worked? And she might have had a different house than I have, and we're not comparing
Yep.
the same thing, but I have a small team. I can
Yes.
make my whole business work out of the basement, and I've yet to have a client that says, "I'm not gonna work with you because it's weird that you have a business out of your house."
Exactly. And the thing is, I know this to be true going back 30 and 35 years ago. Now, after COVID, who even questions it? Like,
True.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, you don't want to come over to my house and get on Zoom. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's funny. Sandra is a good example, but there is also an architect in Long Island who is an architect and interior designer. And she did not move out of her home until I would say it's about 10 years ago. So she probably did about 25 to 28 years of her business. And I'm telling you, multiple $1 million revenue firm. She did an average of 100 to $400,000 a year with window works in window
Oh, wow.
treatments. Like, we're not talking about like, I have a little business on the side. Like, we are talking about every single one of her projects was a build from ground up, from find a piece of land or knock out down a house, all the way to the toilet paper holders and the towel holders. Like, she did everything. She designed the architecture of the home. She did all of the plans, the elevations, the millwork plans, the electrical plans, all the way to the drapery schemes, the furniture schemes, the knobs, everything. And it was crazy because you walked into her house, you would have a meeting as a trade, or she would have a meeting with her clients at her dining room table. I mean, it wasn't even a dedicated room on her third floor, she converted an attic where her 4 or 5 employees worked. Her husband was the bookkeeper. She had a drafts person up there. Usually she had 3 employees and sometimes would have 4 or 5. But you'd walk into her house and you'd sit at her dining room table, the same table that she did dinner at. There was no
Wow.
kitchen table. It was bunkers. And you know what? I remember the first time I walked in, I was like, well, this is a little wackadoodle. It's not even like a dedicated space, right? But you know what? Here was the thing. She never once said anything like, oh, we're just going to be at my dining room. She was just like, oh, lovely to meet you, LuAnn. Please sit down. Let me pull out the floor plan, the blueprints. And I was like, okay. And there were times when I would be there in client meetings with her in this space. Like, there was just no compunction about it. It was like, and it's all how you present it. If you're like,
True.
oh, I only have this, well, then you're right. You only have this, you know? She didn't sign multiple $1 million deals and think, well, I should rent a conference room to do this somewhere. She
Right.
was confident in her work and what she did and her talent and her ability, and she ran a tight ship on the front and the back end, and it was like, does it matter what piece of wood we sign this paper at? I'm sorry.
No.
Right.
Well, obviously she had her act together because her house was not embarrassing to have people walk through. There were
Well, and
kids'
that was
toys
the other
everywhere.
thing. Well, that was the other thing. It wasn't even like, her house was designed at the level that the houses she was designing, which was
Right.
also bonkers. I did her work for 20 years before she finally was like, maybe we should put some window treatment because she was too busy. She didn't have
Right.
draperies in her dining room or living room. She had this formal, traditionally designed home, but it was never designed to completion. It was
Oh,
a riot. It was an absolute riot. And she wasn't like, oh, I'm going to sell you $1.5 million worth of, soft goods and furnishings and, $300,000 worth of window treatments. And I have none. She didn't care. She didn't
well,
care. She
and
had a
what a lesson.
portfolio that supported what she was doing.
That is amazing. What a lesson to everybody who feels like, well, I'm a designer, so I better have the best house in town to prove that I'm
Nope.
the best designer. And I'm like,
Nope.
I
Nope.
don't have the energy to design. It's the cobbler's shoes over here. I don't have time. My kids are without shoes because I don't spend my
She
time on everything else.
I'm going to tell you what, I would tell you at least 60 or 70% of the homes that we did with her, which is usually 3 homes a year for going on 40 years, 60 to 70% of them, their entry foyer was more square footage than her foyer, living room, and dining room together.
Wow.
Like, she was regularly designing homes and building homes that were, and keep saying was as if it's not current. She's still on the planet doing work, right? But 10,000 was sort of the bottom and up to 25,000 square foot. Whereas her home was like, parking on her street was obnoxious because it was a tiny little, street with all the houses crowded in. You know what I'm saying? I would have to time block 2 blocks away because there was only, it's just, and she just was like, it didn't. And the thing is, because it was in her, she lived in her confidence of what she delivered. She did not overthink it and she did not equate it with anything. And so, whether we're talking about your superpower as an integrator, we're talking about the real estate that you do that surrounds you when you do it, it's we all we honor our best selves when we literally know our best strengths and skill sets and we feed them and we develop them and we cultivate them and we mitigate for the things that we're not so good at. We hire for those, we get training for those, we research on those, but we don't worry about taking the thing that we're less good at and making it as good as our superpower. That is a waste of our time, is our waste of our, we get it as good as we can as a human and then we hire around it to get it up to the same level. But walking around every day expecting that my business skills are going to be as good as my visionary and strategy skills or your design skills are as going to be good as your integrator skills, we just do a disservice by not doing our best work. Make sense?
Correct.
Yeah.
Be unapologetically good at what you do
Yep, and
and
keep
hire the
doing it
rest.
better, keep doing it
Yeah,
better and better and better, and yeah, you can't just, like, write off the other stuff. The whole point of the podcast
right.
is you can't write off that you don't know how to do business, but you don't bang your head. It's like banging you're sitting there with blonde hair, I have brown hair. It's like banging my head against the wall. Blondes have more fun. I have to have blonde hair. It's like, "No, girl. No, girl. They don't. Figure out how to have fun with brown hair."
Correct.
Right? So, oh my goodness. I know this has been long, but I would curious and I didn't prep you for it. So if you don't
It's
have
okay.
it, but um a quick if you had a quick aha or takeaway, because we talked about Shauna Lynn and me, but I wondered if you had a quick aha or takeaway from your time with Amber de la Garza or Deb Mitchell. Just
Oh,
curious, as the other two experts, that doesn't start in a whole another 30-minute can of worms.
hopefully it won't. For sure. I had takeaways from every single one, and I've been implementing bits of everything. Amber's, I immediately went in and asked her, I was like, I need to know how do I get my employees to do more? I have so many ideas. I
Wow.
want to push. I've got all these special projects to help build the business and I need them to do more. And she's like, stop. Are
That's
they
so
doing what
it.
yeah. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing first? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what are their job roles? Are they doing those efficiently? And I was like, oh,
Oh.
are you saying that I have put too much on their plates? And she's like, possibly.
Maybe, we don't know, right?
No. And so I went back and I just presented it yesterday to my team. I went back and looked at all of their roles. They wrote down their roles and I added to them what they understood that they were doing. And I prioritized them. And I
Oh,
said,
no.
these are your high priority tasks. These are how many hours I anticipate you should be spending on each week, all the way down to the low priority. And I'm like, the goal, I recognize all these special projects are kind of in the low priority. I would love if you could get like 1 hour a week on the low priority ones. But obviously, if you're sick or if you're going out of town, get those high priority ones done first.
Yep.
And it really has helped them have clarity on what I'm expecting, because I'd get a wild goose chase and be like, oh, let's go do this. Let's go work on a newsletter or something. I hear something from one of the podcasts and they're like, well, what should I work on first, Sonia? And I'm like, oh, I may have given you 100 projects.
Right, right,
But
right, right. I love that. I love that.
yeah,
To step back to look and analyze first. Love it.
first.
Yep.
And then Deb immediately went and she opened up my website and she was like, do this, do this, do this. And she was like, reformat it. And I was like, oh, that makes much more sense. Like, I've got different packages. She's like, which package do you want to sell the most? I'm like, well, the biggest one. She's like, don't make it equal to the other ones.
Right.
Oh, that makes so much more sense. So it's like reformatting my pages. She's a lot more of a wordsmith. So there's some
Yes.
tasks that she's given me that I have not quite done yet because I need more time to think about it and
Yes, that's deep work, right?
deeper work. But I'm like, I did everything that she was like, these are the quick things to fix it. And I'm like, love it. Like,
Oh my goodness.
immediately got in, what is it what I was trying to sell? And she made sure that that was on the forefront. Design books are on your front page. Why are they hidden? And I was like, I don't know, because I didn't know people wanted to find a design book first, but she put it like within the first paragraph, pretty
Oh, I
much.
love it. I love
So,
it.
I mean, there are takeaways from every single one. You think it's fast, and it does. That day goes by
Oh,
so
I know. It's crazy,
fast.
isn't it?
And if you do your homework and come in saying, these are my questions, I
Yeah.
didn't even fully understand what the questions would be, but I knew my questions in business. And then I tweaked them per person I was talking to based on their superpower, and came away with so much insight from all of them that I'm still working through all of my homework.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Literally, I could pick it apart for another hour, but I'm gonna
I know.
let it go there. I'm really I'm so impressed. I always every single person that comes to the doors of Power Talk Friday, I've always find something to connect and be impressed by, because every single person has a thing, like I said, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just finding it, seeing it, helping you develop it and lean into it. So I am so happy that it brought us together and that we've, been able to establish this relationship, Sonia.
Oh, ditto, LuAnn. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to watching you build this lady.
I I plan on doing it. I'm not going to say hope. I plan on it.
Awesome.